We say things like, maybe later, perhaps another time, or I'll see you tomorrow. But for some of us, there won't be a tomorrow. Listen as your worst nightmares come to life. These nightmares have become someone's reality. My name is Justin Crowley, and this is The Murder Project. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 32 of The Murder Project. In this episode, we're going to be doing the debrief on the Ryan Waller and Heather Quan case. This is the one that, if you listen to episode 31, got a little wild and had a crazy ending. If you didn't listen to it, I suggest going back and listening to that in case you missed some info. For those that are new to the Murder Project, the debrief is an episode where I sit down with my good friend and former police officer, Mike Smith. In the debrief, we discuss the case from both sides of the aisle, theories that we might have, and anything we think needs a second look. The debrief is an unscripted and off-the-cuff commentary about the cases that we are currently covering. The hope of the debrief is to break the case down further, but in a relaxed environment with the true crime that we love and also some laughter. So, let's get the episode started. Mikey Mike, Mick, Michael, Smitty Smith. Mike Smith, how you doing?
Man, you're hitting a lot of throwbacks for me right there.
Yeah, I was trying to.
I'm doing good. I'm doing well. It's been a good week for me. I've just been busting a chill. I'm off this week.
Yeah.
So that kind of worked out for us. So there wasn't any crunch to my time or anything like that. And I'm ready to talk about this because this was definitely the double/triple take case where, as the details emerged, I was like, what? Wicked what?
Yeah, this week we're talking about the Kyle Rittenhouse case that's going... I'm just kidding. We're not doing that.
Whoa, boy,
definitely not doing that.
We gotta wait for this to. We gotta wait for that one to wrap up.
Yeah, there's a man. That's just for me. It's kind of like there's some cases we can talk about. I feel that have kind of some hot button issues on them. This one's just really fresh. There's a lot of emotion and feelings for both sides of. On both sides of the aisle on this one. I feel like it's too hot right now.
Yeah, and the fact of the matter, it's one of those where the truth and what's going to determine the outcome of this is a very thin line right in the middle.
Yeah.
Very thin.
Yeah, so let's not get caught up on
it.
We're about to...
I ain't doing it. Back off me, man.
I was doing that as a joke, and we almost just rolled right into it.
We did.
All right, so we are talking about Ryan Waller and the murder of his girlfriend, Heather Quan, and everything that kind of happened in that scenario. This takes place, now that... Oh, no, I did not mess that up. So originally, I think Heather was from Glendale, Arizona, but the case takes place in Phoenix, Arizona.
Right, yeah.
And so...
I believe that's correct.
Great climate. And
it is.
Got that year-round good weather.
It is, and it's a very expensive place to live.
That's true.
It's a pricey place, yeah.
And so they are, they're dating each other. Ryan at this time is 18 years old, as I had mentioned, and Heather 21. And Ryan was just out of high school from the information that I gathered. And he and Heather had started dating each other, and I wasn't able to find the specific period of time because I thought that would be, when I did the part 1 episode, I thought that would be important to tie in, especially during the interview process with the police, because of his inability to kind of explain either who she was or anything about her, but...
communicate at all.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But it starts out with, it's around Christmas time. It's December 23rd, and Ryan and Heather are together. Ryan already has plans to meet up with his family for Christmas on Christmas Day.
Right.
This particular night, Heather and Ryan decide that they are going to stay in. They grab some pizza, they get a movie, and they...
just looking to bust a chill.
Yeah, just going to bust a chill. And this is before Netflix and chill.
It is.
It is, yeah. It's 2006.
Holy cow.
So we're not quite there yet, but...
Yeah, it wasn't a streaming service. Yeah, you still had to get them in the mail.
Yeah, Netflix, yeah, I remember that. You got them in the mail. They didn't even have the Redbox set up, or not, especially not around here.
Not for a couple more years.
Yeah. And so from what anybody can gather, it is a, I guess, seemingly normal night is from what people think.
Of course.
Nobody hears from them on Christmas Eve. Christmas Day rolls around, and Ryan's dad, Don, starts getting a little worried because they didn't show up for the Christmas festivities.
Right. And they'd also been attempting to contact him.
Yeah.
To no avail. So, yeah, I'm definitely all alarm bells would be going off. Like, there isn't a busy right now, I'll get back to you. There's nothing. It's just radio silence. And they're like, okay, now we're already through the holiday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We got to go. I need to go figure out where my son is.
And especially if you think about what time of year it is, it strikes me as a little bit odd that nobody thought that it was weird that they couldn't get a hold of him on Christmas Eve even.
That is also strange, but, it's the holidays. People are busy. They more than likely already had at least some type of get-together or event, maybe. And so I can kind of see in like a roundabout way that they're like, you know what? One day's cool, but the actual holiday of, yeah, I'm starting to be concerned.
Yeah.
I would, me personally, especially if that person was already supposed to be there, like if I'm expecting you to show up at some event either on the eve or the day of, or both, and you don't show up, I'd be blowing your phone up, like, where the hell's Crowley?
Yeah. And so his dad, apparently his family, his dad, they are trying to get a hold of him, but as you said, to no avail. And they kind of just let that go, get to Christmas Day. They don't show up. So that's when I say they go ahead and move on with Christmas without Ryan and Heather. Mm-hmm. And then, to me, I was thinking about maybe because of the time that Dawn called the police, everybody's probably already left, and either he and his wife are sitting in bed talking about everything going on. And as a parent, he just gets that sinking, like sickening feeling.
Yeah, dread.
And it is strange because depending on maybe somebody's lifestyle, sometimes people get a little bit nervous about calling the cops to do a welfare check, because what if you end up putting your kid into a bad, like he's over there on a bender with his girlfriend. Let's just say that, I'm not saying this happened, but we're just role playing here. He's over at his house on a bender with his girlfriend. His buddies are all over there. The cops show up, knock on his door. He's underage.
Yeah, of course.
There's cocaine in the house.
Yeah.
Just
a big pile of nose toot on the table.
Yeah, and his dad's like, hey, did you find him? And he's like, yeah, we did find him. Slapped him with 3 felonies, too. It was a good one.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. What was your name? Thanks, Don.
Yeah, thanks, Don. Appreciate the call. So he ends up sometime after midnight. There is talk about 1:30.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's the time he placed the call, if that's the time that police arrived on scene. But either way, around 1:30 in the morning, the police show up at his apartment. They knock on the door, and they don't get an answer at first. And to be honest, like with someone who's, both of us work midnights, that's not unusual to show up at someone's house during the middle of the night and then be asleep. And
it's completely normal.
Yeah. I don't know how many times I've tried to get a hold of somebody. I knocked on the door, no answer. And that's why I said, you cop knock. They're probably out there cop knocking, someone's, out
flashing.
there.
They're trying to look through the blinds,
yep.
Trying to look through any piece of glass that looks into the apartment with the lights, trying to alert anybody or see anything. Yeah, but you get the broad side of the spectrum and when you're a cop and you're knocking somebody's door. They either don't answer, they peek through the blinds, and then they never look again. Mm-hmm. They start to unlock the door, then it locks again, and nobody answers it. It could be anything. So they're just like, this is so routine, it's insane.
Or this is the best one. You knock on the door, they peek out the door, or the blinds, and then they shut all the lights off. Mm-hmm. Like magically, you didn't see the lights turn off.
Right.
Instead of like, there's no one in here, just us chickens.
Yeah. They're like, nobody home.
Yeah. It's like, we saw somebody turn the lights out. How would you, it's one of those things where I think just subconsciously people are like, shut all the lights off and everybody be quiet.
Yeah, they won't.
Eventually they're going to leave.
They're going to leave. Their vision is based on movement. Yeah.
So, but as they're getting ready to leave, they hear the deadbolt flip open or however, and the door opens and Ryan's standing there. And Ryan looks like he has been in a terrific street fight.
Yeah, he's got a pretty good raspberry on the nugget.
Yeah, both his eyes are black, and I mean, it looks like something from that you'd see like a boxer or something after a bad fight. Like one eye swollen shut, which kind of plays into later why maybe some things were missed. The other one is black all the way around, and it looks like he was in a bad fight. So for me, that would tip me off as in, we're going to need to hang out and figure out like what's going on, especially if the injuries look new, recent.
I mean, they're bright purple and red.
Yeah.
That's pretty recent.
And he has, we've got some pictures of him. And if you watch that video that I posted in the link to the show notes, you got a pretty good glimpse of what he looked like. Mm-hmm. And so the cops start talking to him, and immediately, from their perception, he's being a little evasive in his answering.
Right.
And they say that he's kind of in a daze, that he's not really paying attention to what questions they're asking, and that's why they think like he's just throwing answers out there that don't really mean anything. And one of the things that I pointed on in the part one is that, like I mentioned, sometimes people think it's better to be evasive than to not talk at all.
Right.
But the one thing that they do notice is the girl sleeping, quote unquote, sleeping on the couch behind them. They think that she's sleeping on the couch.
Yeah.
And so they're like, who's that? And this is when he gets into one of those deals where he's like, I don't know if he's giving, it's Alicia, it's Kristen, it's Heather, it's so-and-so. I don't know. She's sleeping on the couch.
Right.
They're like, hey, you mind if we go over there and take a peek? And at first, he doesn't want to let him in the house because, like in the interview, he says multiple times he just wants to go back to sleep. And from what I feel like, the reason it took him that long to get to the door is because he was actually asleep at the time that they showed up.
I believe that.
But when the cops walk over there, a little bit of a turnaround.
That's right. She is very deceased.
Yeah, she is dead. She has a single gunshot wound to the side of her head. And I believe I read that it was around the temple area. Mm-hmm. And the cops are like, okay, stop everything.
That's right.
This is a crime scene. Mm-hmm. And because of, I would say, the injuries that Ryan had on his face, he's automatically looked at as the suspect.
Yeah, not just that, but is any of the verbal cues, being evasive, even if it wasn't intentional, they don't know. Mm-hmm. They're just taking what they got in front of them. And as far as like securing a crime scene, she's dead. He's not. He's going to go downtown and talk about it. There's no one else in the house that they know of at this point. I'm sure once they led Ryan out of the house, they went ahead and cleared the house, made sure nobody else was there. Mm-hmm. And you're going to go ahead and start looking for any sort of evidence that you can get. I'm sure that they checked Heather's body to make sure that there was no reason to do any sort of life-saving efforts on her. Right, and if that much time had passed, it would be very obvious at this point to any law enforcement professional who'd been around for a day or two. Yeah, that she has been dead.
Yeah, she's been dead, and there's nothing that you can do. And a lot of times, if you're in a window where it's kind of unclear, I think we've talked about this before, where we'd have EMS come in and go ahead and give us the okay. Put the leads on and give us a okay. Yeah, there's there's nothing here. But in a situation like this, it's kind of hard to explain, but you would know straight out of the gate.
And I can tell you right now that the most telltale sign is you touch them.
Yes.
Because you can think right now, for all the listeners out there, think about touching someone who's alive. The texture. It's soft. It's warm. And then when you touch a person who's been dead for any amount of time, but not like super recently, it's dense. It's cold. The body feels unnaturally hard and cool to the touch. And it's very unnerving. And I think instinctually, you're hardwired to know that is not an alive person.
Yeah.
You know, because it does not feel natural at all. It feels almost like they're fake.
Yeah. Yeah, you're looking at somebody who's like there's some sort of mannequin or something laying there.
Right, and it's never a mannequin.
Never.
Yeah, and also there's some other biological functions that will have occurred by then, but I don't want to be too gross.
Yep.
And so we're not going to talk about those.
Yeah. So I think that where we can definitely spend some time in this one is breaking down why things went the way that they did, or what that kind of unknown is, because Ryan's dad, Don, is relieved when he sees Ryan walking out of the house. Then that's followed by, crap, he's in handcuffs.
He's in custody. So this does, plus his face looks like he's been messed up.
Yeah, it looks like he got beat really bad.
Yeah.
And so they walk him out to the car. They put him in the back of the car, and they kind of go on and carry out business. I believe that Ryan's dad walks up and asks what's going on, and they at least let him know that there is a deceased person in the house. Mm-hmm. And I imagine they wouldn't give him much more information past that.
Oh, I would say any good officer would not have said anything else other than the hard facts. Like, there's a deceased person in there, and he's now in custody to go downtown.
We need to talk to him.
And that's it.
Yeah. And that should be what the end of it is. Mm-hmm. But the weird thing about this is that for three, and that's why I'm saying I don't know if the 1:30 was when he called the cops, because from the time that they made contact with him and put him in the back of the police car, it isn't until 5 o'clock in the morning. So 3 to 3.5 hours have passed since they made contact with Ryan.
Yeah.
Took him into custody.
Here's my guess on that. They have him in custody. Now, one of those officers on scene is probably making phone call after phone call. You got to call the supervisor. Then you got to call the on-call detective, if that's how it works there. I know in my experience that is how it works.
Yeah.
So then you got to call the on-call detective. He may not answer, so you got to call multiple times. He's going to call and want like an abridged version of what you got.
Yep.
Tell me what you got. You fill him in. He's going to be writing notes. He's probably going to ask some basic questions to kind of get an idea, and then they have to wait for him to get there. I mean, at this hour, more than likely, that detective is not awake, waiting for this call.
Yeah, so that could have been another hour plus.
I can see that time going by very slowly and waiting for people to show up.
Yeah.
Not to mention, if they got to wait for that on-call detective to get there to look at the scene to then call for crime scene.
Yeah.
Because it might be his authority that gets them launched and not the on-call supervisor. Who knows? I'm just saying.
There's a lot of checks and balance in places because everybody is, once you get on the clock, and then we're talking overtime, mm-hmm. Is the city's budget jacked up?
Right.
All this has to play into this case, because you're exactly right. The detective may have to get out there and say, yes, we do need ID techs out here to process the scene and do that. Now all of these people have to get called out. Right. Surely it's going to be more than one. It might just be one, because it looks like more of a isolated incident, I guess you could say.
And then, yeah, my point is I can see that time going by slowly, but still the wheels are all starting to turn. So to me, it doesn't make like perfect sense, but it does make some sense that it would take that long to get there, having had to escort people to mild departments like detective floor to be interviewed / interrogated, and then wait for them to get done. And then, I mean, hours are going by.
Yeah.
I mean, it can be pretty slow and lengthy.
And I know, like, at the sheriff's office that I worked at, I don't think that there would have been a scenario like this for us, because one of the things that we did, especially in situations like this, is we would have gotten him out of there fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. I think one of the other things that was sort of missed in this is that both departments, the sheriff's office and the police department that you work for, it was very common for us to call medical, call EMS mm-hmm. on a lot of different calls.
Right.
And even if you are the aggressor, that doesn't mean that you get denied any medical care.
That's correct.
And so if there was a situation where EMS showed up, I feel like if I would have been there and this would have been, because you also have to realize who's the lead officer.
Yeah.
Who's it. So let's say I was the lead officer and they checked, they come in, they're like, yeah, the girl on the couch is deceased. There's nothing we can do. I would have probably said, okay, let's go check out this guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would have been standard for us. Now we move on to the other guy. Let's have him checked out and then let's move on.
Right. I agree. But
in this situation, that doesn't happen. And it is for whatever reason. I think we also have to look at the fact that it's a large city. And if, in a situation like this or in a city like this, the police department may get charged a certain amount of money for every call out they get. And so they're like, hey, he's good. We'll have him checked out after the interview. Whatever we can definitely speculate what the reasons are for a lot of this different actions. We're just trying to give you maybe a baseline of how things could have went.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that is interesting to me is when they get to the police station, they put Ryan in the interrogation room, and he was in that.
It's like a disposable suit, a paper suit that they would give you at a hospital for a checkup,
like an Egger suit.
But yeah, it's like a disposable suit, and I felt like you might have tripped on that.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, I was struggling. I have the image of it in my head.
Right.
I know what it feels like.
Right.
I know exactly what, and then as I'm trying to explain it just my head, I'm like, it's like I'm shooting and missing at everything. I'm trying to pull. I'm just trying to grasp something and hold on to it.
Yeah, but it's like one of those paper suits that they give you when you ain't got no clothes, or especially after they take all your clothes for evidence collection.
Yeah, and they definitely would have done this in this scenario, because you're going to, how they found him, they're going to take him back to the police station, and immediately they're going to take him in a change out room, and they're going to be like, hey, we want all the stuff that you're wearing in that paper sack right there.
Yeah, and anything in your pockets, and this one right here.
Yeah.
Yep, straight down, past the skivs.
Yeah, everything.
All of it. Yep.
Everything, all of it.
So I'm sure poor Ryan was probably even more confused. He probably still had no idea what was really going on. All he knows is that these people of authority are telling him to get out of his clothes into this itchy paper suit.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's weird to be told and to tell someone to go when they're like, all right, go ahead and put your clothes in the bag. And they're like, okay. And then you're like, the underwear too. And then it's like you're in this weird standoff where they're like,
it never gets any easier. It's always weird.
All of it.
Yeah.
And then you have to stay in the presence of someone.
Right.
Because they don't want you to discard or hide whatever, any evidence, contraband, anything like that. So you're standing there the whole time and you're like, and the underwear too. And they're like,
man, but I'm naked under that. And you're like, buddy, I don't want to be here either.
Trust me. I don't.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable too. Let's just please move on. Let's just get past this and move on. So they take him into the interrogation room, and the detective walks in and starts talking to him. And that clip that I played in the part one, that was at right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that kind of said, I wanted everyone to understand kind of how he was speaking, what the tone of his voice was, how he was communicating, all of those little things to where you can kind of get an idea of something ain't right here.
Right. And man, I tell you, I did.
What were your feelings the first time I sent you that video?
Yeah.
You're watching it for the first time. What are you thinking?
I thought somebody whooped this dude.
Yeah.
And this is long before I knew any of the later details. And so I was like, man, somebody whooped this dude. But it's not even that he was being evasive. I just thought he was off.
Yeah.
I thought maybe drugs. Of course, the first thing in my brain was maybe he's doped up right now. He don't even know. But
if you haven't talked to somebody that's on a 7-day meth high or a 7-day bender or something like that, you can get conversations that are similar to this, except a little more hyped.
Yeah. All of his questions. First of all, his volume is dipping in and out. His answers are short. It's not even evasive. It's just odd. There's just something off about him. Like he doesn't even know what he's saying. So at some points is what it felt like.
It comes off as evasive for sure.
Sure.
But but as you figure out kind of what's going on, you're like, oh,
okay.
Because to me, when I started watching it and I was reading about the case and then I found a link to the YouTube video and I started watching the YouTube video and I'm like, this dude is, I thought the same. Maybe he's on drugs or some sort of, he's had, few too many alcoholic beverages or something like.
Yeah, maybe a couple of the alcoholic beverages.
Yeah, he was drinking heavily, passed out, an hour before they showed up. They wake him up in a drunken haze. He's still intoxicated.
Yeah.
And so he's not putting stuff together. But the thing that was making me, and I'll be honest, it was making me angry about how many times he was going, I don't know. And I'm like, dude, this dude is like trying to answer questions. And then after he gives an answer, and then there's usually always some follow-up. Mm-hmm. So we'll ask a question that we want some information on. If we don't get all of the information that we're looking for, we'll ask follow-up questions.
That's right. Try to narrow that down.
Yeah, we're narrowing down timelines. We're narrowing down how incidents played out. We're looking to gather evidence through confession,
right?
Through interview. And if you can kind of get this base timeline set up, you can kind of figure out how all this went down. And that's also good information you can relay back to the team that's still at the crime scene.
Right.
And so a lot of times you'll see the detectives walk out, walk back in, walk out, walk back in. That could be for numerous reasons. Mm-hmm. They could be calling people at the scene. Hey, look for a gun. It's under the couch.
Right.
The left side of the couch. I just talked to the guy. He said he put the gun under the couch. Mm-hmm. Then they can retrieve the weapon, stuff like that. Or they could be just walking out to give you time to think about things, whatever the scenario. We'll go over that more in the next Two Not Cops, or whenever we do the interrogation. But
yeah,
I was upset about the way that he was answering the questions. Like he was giving an answer, and then when the detective hit the follow-up, he'd say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, in my head, I'm thinking he's trying to lie.
Yeah.
About what is going on. And the bad thing about someone who doesn't have their story down is that whenever you try to get your fake story together and you're already in the interrogation room, it unravels super quick.
Very quickly. And his body language didn't help either.
No.
Lots of jitters, fidgeting, constantly shifting in his seat, touching at his face, which makes a lot of sense. But, I mean, it's just all of it together. You are left thinking that this is shady.
Yeah.
It's just shady. You're like, this guy knows something. This guy's involved. However you want to say that, that's what you're left thinking at a cursory glance / listen.
Right. And he's saying things like, okay, well, so who's the girl on the couch? And he's like, at one point he says, it's Heather. And he, what's Heather's last name? And he says her last name is Kyman, which is not. He says that she's like 16 or 17 years old, which she isn't.
Yeah.
And he says that they had what he's trying to say is that they had a business class together in high school, which based off their ages, I don't know if that would have been, I mean, I don't think that when she was a junior or senior in high school, she was having classes with a freshman. That's sort of not how that works.
Not really, no.
She was, and he says she was a business class. And he's like, what?
Yeah.
You guys had a business class together? And to me, it was one of those things where I think the detective was answering a lot of his questions or trying to give a better answer than he did.
Maybe thinking it would get more information.
Jump the story ahead. You guys had a business class together. Y'all were in school together. That's how y'all know each other, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then he says, I don't know. I'm like, golly, this guy.
Yeah.
This guy is killing me here. Like he's trying not to answer the questions truthfully because he doesn't, in my mind, I'm thinking he doesn't realize where this road's going. Like as they're traveling together at the same time, he's like, I don't know if we're going left or right here. And so I want to reserve these crucial details just so in case something doesn't come back and bite me.
Right.
But he keeps on answering questions. He says, oh, Alicia, Eric are over there. Oh, it's Christina's on the couch. Christina was over at the apartment doing hair, or there's there was something weird like that she was over at the apartment doing hair or something. You know, it's like one of those things where like, where, like what in the world?
Where's this even coming from? Yeah.
Yeah. Where is this going? Like, what crazy roller coaster ride are we on right now?
Right.
And it's just, and it goes on like this. I watched the majority of the interview. I skipped a few parts just, especially like when I'm waiting for the detective to come in. And
right.
Like, I skipped parts like that. But I pretty much watched the entire thing, and it's painstaking, like to get through, because he says, I don't know all the time. And the more that I watch the video as we're, 30, 40 minutes in, that's when I'm starting to think to myself, like, I think there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
I think like something's off. Like now I'm changing my mind that he's in this sort of evasive area where he's not trying to answer questions, but I'm like, there's something might be wrong with this guy. Like he got whacked in the head too hard or something like that. And I think that's a crucial part of this, is because they're trying to figure out also, Heather's dead on the couch, but they're also trying to figure out, how did you end up this way?
Right.
Why do you look like this?
Mm-hmm. And he can't answer any of that. No,
he says, I think at one point he says he doesn't know. At another point he says, well, Heather hit me. Mm-hmm. He's like, why? He's like, oh, it was an accident. And the detective's probably thinking to himself, one, she accidentally hit you one time and this is what you look like?
Right.
And this is important. This part of it is important because if this detective, which I'm not aware of, but if this detective was on the scene and saw Heather's body, if Ryan had injuries like he has, there should be some sort of evidence on Heather's person,
right,
that shows that they are in this combat situation, because that's what it would be.
On her knuckles.
Yeah, hands, knuckles, scratches, arm, you're checking something. The arms, you're checking everything. And then you're looking around the house, looking at the evidence to see, like, okay, where did this terrible fight take place?
Right.
Is there turned over furniture? Are there different things happening? No. But the answer is no.
Yeah, there's none of that.
No, for everything they see, like, Heather's just laying on the couch and then she's dead. And then Ryan looks like he's been in like an MMA fight.
Yeah.
And then sent home. And this, I think what also plays into this is that if you kind of move past where the police are interrogating, the police officer is interrogating Ryan, and he's like, hang on just a second. Like, let me look at your head let me just take a peek here at what's going on. And then as he puts his hand on Ryan's head and he moves his hand one time and it's over on the side of Ryan's head, you can see him like flinch and he's like, ah. And I think that's when he put his finger probably on the wound.
Yeah.
And then he's like, wait a minute. What is that?
What is that? Yeah.
Oh my God. It's a gunshot wound.
Yeah. You have a head wound at least.
And then you can see him move over in front of Ryan's face and look at his nose. And if you remember from the part 1 where I said Ryan had told the detective that he had been shot with an arrow.
Yes.
And that's one of those crazy things to me where I was saying in his mind is trying to work all of these details out.
I can't even begin to imagine the fog that his brain was working under at this point, which we'll get into the bigger details of why. But if you listen to part 1, you get it. His like nothing. I'm sure every time he tried to have a coherent thought, it turned to mush.
And then it's gone.
Yeah. So maybe even if for a millisecond he knew the answer to the question he was just asked, the next second it's gone.
It's not there.
His brain is in shock and trying to just survive. And so everything is a haze to him. I would wager that's what he was going through.
His brain's definitely swelling.
Yeah.
He's getting worse by the minute. Let's just say the minute. I mean, it's obvious that would be with the sort of head injury that he had, that he would be getting worse by the minute. And just like you said, I think that if you listen to this interview, you can hear him, just like you said, you can hear him start to answer a question and then poof.
Yep. It's gone.
There's nothing there. And then so he's like, he pauses, usually pauses for a second, and he's like, I don't know.
Yep.
And because literally, like, whatever thought process he has been interrupted, and there's nothing on the other side of it.
That's right. Yeah, I believe that.
There's nothing there to put those two things together. And so the detective looks at him, and he's like, oh, holy cow, I think we got a situation here.
Yeah.
I think this guy's like really been shot in the face, like you said, because he also mentioned, and this is one of those parts where I think his brain started to work again, because he's like, okay, so you got shot in your eye with an arrow. And he says, no, a revolver.
A revolver.
It worked. Like his brain, like it's coming back. That part is coming back.
He even makes like a pantomime.
Yeah.
Like he even points at himself like, no, he got me with a revolver.
With the revolver. And then you can see it quickly fading, because he starts mumbling about, so you don't have the shell, it's something about, so you don't have the bullets, you don't have the casings, you don't have he's trying to verbalize, there won't be any shell casings. He shot me with a revolver. There's no shell casings. And then he went in there and shot Heather.
Yeah.
And he's like, who's this? He's like, Richie and his dad. And they're like, okay. And then, and that's why I reference this in the part one, is because at this point, we're like 4 stories in now.
Yeah.
And so now you have to think to this detective, he's like, oh, so now Richie and his dad shot you. Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
yeah.
not too funny, but I could see at this time that any detective or officer is like, oh, on your 4th story, this is what happened. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So you got shot in the face with a revolver, but we're still sitting here having a conversation. And that's one of the things also, I think, when he tells Ryan, he's like, you didn't get shot in the face.
Yeah, they easily dismiss it. They're like, no, you didn't. You'd be dead.
Yeah, you'd be dead. And I think any reasonable person out there would probably assume that if you got shot in the face with a revolver, then you probably would be dead.
That's correct. Yeah, I would say.
I mean, Heather's dead.
Right. And even just non-case related, in my own experience, I was very surprised to find out in my later years of life, especially my time in the military and then in law enforcement, how often people get shot in the head and don't die.
Yeah.
It definitely busts the mystique that you get dome-pieced and you're done. You're one and done. People can, I mean, if you want to call that miraculous, the miracles in that grade be happening all the time.
Yeah. And me personally, I can think of 2 different times that I showed up somewhere after someone had been, and I think both of them were self-inflicted, but you get there, one with a shotgun and one with a pistol, and you get there and you're like, why?
How is this person alive?
Yeah, they're like talking to you and you're like, Joe, Jesus.
Yeah.
Like the guy that shot himself with the shotgun. That was one of those situations where one of my buddies was the first one there. And this guy is laying out in the front yard.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, something happened to this guy. He's like, talk to him. And his face is gone.
Yeah.
And the guy's like trying to talk to him. And he's like, oh geez.
I mean,
he's not dead.
That's horror movie type of unnerving is what it is.
Yeah.
There's no way you can expect that. Just with the information you have, like, holy cow, there's a lot of blood. There's not a face. You're like, this person is dead. And then they're like, gurgle, gurgle, mouth noise. And you're like, oh my God, what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it is possible.
It is.
But this detective is looking at Ryan while they're talking to each other. And he's thinking, no, this is not what happened. And unfortunately, in law enforcement, if you're headed down that road where I'm sitting in an interrogation interview room and I'm talking to the guy and I'm thinking to myself, this is the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to get the story out of him. This is what happens.
Right.
You have to be, when you're interviewing people, you have to be open to all possibilities.
You do.
Even the ones you think are not possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you think this is not possible, your job at that point is to gather all of the information that you can to try to further your investigation, not build a case around someone using the information that they give you to make that the person.
Right.
And so I feel like this guy, this detective, and I wouldn't say it's reasonable, but I would say that he's put himself in the situation where he thinks he's talking to the guy that murdered Heather.
Yeah.
And he tries really hard to get there.
Well, I mean, we've been on this for a second, but statistically, that is the person that did it.
Yeah.
There's nobody else there. The door was locked. She was dead, has been dead. He was in there busting a chill as far as this guy knows, even though he looks like he got smacked by Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of
He was
things.
on the wrong end of Mike Tyson Punch Out.
Yeah. It's just a lot. That is a bad place to be. He still got it.
Yeah, he does.
It is a lot of things just leaning the needle in that direction. Plus, he's getting no solid evidence, being evasive, all the body language giving the idea that he's trying to not communicate with you on purpose or be deceitful. I mean, do I like it? No.
No.
But does it make sense that he keeps coming to that conclusion like this is the guy? It does. But you don't have to like it.
Yeah.
Right.
You're exactly right. All right. So, like you said, we spent a little time on that one, but I know that in all the comments that I read and all the reactions I read, that was one of the things that a lot of people harped on. Why is this kid still sitting in this interrogation room when he's obviously injured?
Yeah.
And you guys are ignoring those facts. That's why we think it got to this point.
Right. And he also says it straight up. I got shot in the face.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the very least, I could see let's get a paramedic in here to look at this, or any medical professional to get a closer look. Does that sound reasonable? Like something you can just snap your fingers and do as a law enforcement officer? No. But it couldn't hurt to try, because he just said he got shot in the face. And the guy even looks and sees something ain't right.
Yeah. He is aware of this.
Yeah.
But he doesn't follow up on it.
It is odd. Yeah, I did find that pretty odd and kind of unnerving. I was like, you even looked and you're thinking it ain't right, but you're just like, no, man, if you'd have got shot in the face, you'd be dead, fool. Tell me the truth.
Flips the paper over. He's like, anyways, back to what I was saying.
I did find that kind of
Where
weird.
were you on, all right. So Ryan gets to the hospital. They call and another thing people pointed out is that the fire department and I think maybe paramedics or whichever, I don't know how they have it set up there. They show up and they're being kind of playful with her. They're like, "Oh man, we got to go check you out. You might have got shot, dude," or something. It was something like that. I know a lot of people think that was inappropriate, but
you know what? Let me just be on the other side of that spectrum from what I would think you're about to say. It's gallows humor.
Yes,
it's not for everyone. That line of work and that lifestyle, it makes you say things like that. Was it appropriate? You can safely say no in 2021. And even back then, it's a little inappropriate, but not outside the realm of normalcy in that line of work. So, was it? Sure. It's not going to change the way that they say it, and it's probably going to happen again. It's just how they deal with it. Besides, imagine somebody told you that.
Mm-hmm.
Standing there talking, handcuffed to a table. Yeah, man. Hey, you got to take this guy to the hospital. He's in there. Take a look at him. And you're like, yeah, he looks like his face is a little messed up. Yeah, he said he got shot in the face. And you're like, sure he did. Yeah.
They're like, no, I feel like he did. And they're like, okay, all right, buddy, come on.
Yeah, okay, come on, man, let's go. You got shot in the face, remember?
Yeah.
No. Is it appropriate? Not really. But that's gallows humor. It's not for everyone, but it does happen, and it will happen. It's just the way it is. When you're around people who are tore up from the floor up all the time, It's just what happens.
Yeah. And when they're in there at this point, checking him out, getting ready to take him to the hospital, it's not like any of these things slowed the process down.
Right.
It just comes off in a negative light to some people.
Of course.
And so I think you explained it perfectly. So he gets to the hospital and they say, "Oh no, this dude's been shot in the face twice." And like I said, one was like a deeper graze wound. It took I believe it was over on the right side of his head.
Yeah.
Took a chunk out of the skull.
Of the bone, yeah.
Yeah. And so, any more over, I think that might have been that might have been the old dirt nap shot.
Yeah.
Where he didn't come back after that. And then the second one was probably through the nose, out the other side of the bridge of the nose, and then into his eye.
Yeah. Oof.
And so he's got shrapnel from the round, and then parts of his bone, his skull, and pieces of bone that have kind of got blown into this injury.
Yeah.
That's causing the brain damage. And then the hit to the side of the head is not like, I'm sure that whenever that happened, it would have felt like he got hit in the side of the head with a bat.
Yeah.
And
also not a great scenario.
No. And so they have to end up removing his eyes, and both of his eyes because of the damage, and parts of his brain.
Yeah.
So, like I said in the part one, it's safe to assume Ryan's never going to be the same after this.
Definitely not. And to think also, while this what they believe to be life-saving surgery has happened, is days old. The damage is irreversible. What's in motion has been in motion. And so all the time that has passed has just made it worse and worse and worse. There's no coming back from it.
Yeah. And I know that there were several people that said that the 6 hours that he was in custody were the most crucial to his brain injury. Ugh. And I have to feel like the 2 days before that did not help.
Well, no, it didn't.
So to me, it would be hard for someone to say that the reason that Ryan ended up like this is because the police took too much time.
Yeah, that's not a very fair thing to say. But you can also imagine those 2 days he spent in this after assault fog. He probably spent resting, laying, not really doing anything but basic life functions.
Yeah.
And so, but now he's freaked out. He's being cuffed. He's being put in a car. He's being put in a room. He's uncomfortable. So I could see why people would want to say that, but
there was some acceleration there,
right?
But still,
but guys, too much time had passed. He was shot in the head.
Yeah,
nothing was going to change the fact that he probably had irreversible damage to not just his eyes but also his brain.
Yeah, and I think talking about this, it's also a good time to talk about had the police shown up, say 2 hours after this event happened, I think it would have been more clear. You might have had a clearer picture of what happened because, like you said, he's roaming around the house. He's probably resting a lot. But when the police show up and knock on his door and he answers, it looks like from the interrogation video and the pictures that I've seen that he's already cleaned up.
Yeah.
And this got me to the point where I was thinking that there are a lot of there's stories out there that I've heard of where people have had traumatic brain injuries from some sort of violence or gunshot or something like that. And even though they have significant damage, they are still able to perform certain functions.
Yeah.
And like things like they say muscle memory, things that you do just out of
autopilot.
Yeah, like autopilot. So in my scenario, I was thinking, if Ryan got shot that night, Heather's dead, he's not really, doesn't really know what's going on, but then he goes to bed and he wakes up the next day, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that his normal routine was to get up in the morning and take a shower. He might have gone into autopilot when he woke up and taken a shower.
He's like, oh man, I really
perhaps changed his clothes.
Yeah. I mean, that's all very reasonable. His brain was just in a fog, so he's just going to start doing things. We don't know. We're just assuming and speculating that that's probably what he did. That's a lot of time to fill.
Yeah.
He didn't try to leave. He didn't call for help. His phone was going off, or their phones. Let's assume it's both. I'm definitely going to feel that way. And nothing was happening. How much time did he spend nearly comatose, just laying around because his body was like, I'm dying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So once they get him to the hospital and they figure all this out, then they're like, okay, what's the most solid information that we have to go on at this point?
Yeah. Let's look at this list of names we got.
Yeah, because we got a lot of names on here, but now that he's talking about being shot in the face with a revolver, that ties in with Richie and Larry Carver.
That's right.
So the police are going to go ahead and explore this avenue. And what do you know? This is one of those scenarios where I don't know if they rolled onto it pretty quickly or if it took them a minute to find them or whatever, but they figure out pretty quickly I'm sure speaking with his family. What are you going to ask? Does Ryan have any enemies?
Yeah, has he got any beef with anybody?
Does he? And I know that if one of the questions answered is, well, I know him and his old roommate Richie been having a problem. Yeah. And that detective is going to be like, we've heard that name before.
Yeah. Did you say Richie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Affirmative link.
Yep.
Here we go. Let's go talk to Richie.
Let's go talk to Richie, exactly.
And then apparently, I don't know the circumstances of that interview, but apparently the story didn't pan out very well, or he admitted that he had done this. They know that Ryan said that his dad, Larry, was with him. They charged both of them with the crimes of the homicide, the intentional homicide, burglary, all of those things. But they have a hard time with Larry getting that first conviction because I believe that Larry only spoke with his wife, which she was able to get immunity from testifying against him. And if that was the situation, then Richie probably never dimed his dad out.
I'd say he probably wouldn't. Yeah.
And then to find out that all of this was over a burglary of a habitation to get seemingly worthless things.
That's right.
What does this guy have that's worth so much money that you would break into his apartment, attempt to kill him, kill his girlfriend, and then what? Get out with a stereo that he got for Christmas 4 years ago?
Yeah, that's worth probably $25.
Yeah, I mean, the kid has nothing. To me, the burglary was more of maybe they thought about the burglary process, but to me, Richie was going over there to kill him,
to hurt him. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because he opens the door and is like, "Hey, what's going on?" Boom, he's shot in the face.
Yep.
Like what's the other? How else is? Or maybe they're listening to some heavy metal music on the way over there, and his dad's just ramping him up, and his dad's like, "You gotta kill him, Richie. You gotta kill him."
Yeah. What does this guy say? He looks like a thrift store James Dean.
Yeah. So we were talking about this before we started the show, and if you look at Richie Carver's mugshot, he looks like a classic kind of like white trash thrift shop James Dean. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said like his best days were probably over after high school.
He looked like he was probably a handsome fella in high school, but he didn't have a lot of prospects after.
Yeah, and his dad just looks like one of those guys that you see, like he's like the pool hall legend.
Yeah, he is.
Like he's like this dude that just hangs out. Yeah. You got thrift shop James Dean, and you got the pool hall legend, and his dad's just like hanging out in smoky bars.
Yep.
Talking about the glory days, just slamming Budweisers, and having like, a good whatever. No disrespect towards Budweiser.
Yeah, absolutely not. It's a fine beverage. It's king of beers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it comes to find out that these dudes went and attempted to, but didn't, and ultimately lead to his demise.
Yeah.
But then killed Heather Quan just to rob the place, or claim just to burglarize the place. And to me, I'm like, absolutely not. Whatever beef they had escalated to the point that they probably got each other all jacked and tan about it.
Yep.
And we're like, you know what? We got to go show that guy we mean business, and we're not going to be messed around with him. Larry is like, that's how we did it back in 1986 around the pool table. And he's like, enough with the pool metaphors, Dad.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. We all hear the stories, man.
He's like,
let's go buy some more cowboy killers.
And he's like, Dad. He's like, yeah. And he's like, because when we was at the pool, he's like, Dad. He's like, all right, let's just go kill him.
Yeah. And you heard the man.
And I think Heather is collateral damage in all this. I bet when they walked after they shot Ryan and they walk around the corner, and I believe Heather at this point is probably sitting up, and she's like, oh, and they're like, and Larry's probably like, Richie, go on now.
Yep. Just like we talked about.
Boy. Mm-hmm. Back at the pool hall, and he's like, Dad.
Dad, I'm in the zone.
Yeah. He's like, right now, Dad, I'm in the zone.
Golly.
And then he ends up shooting her. They do what they do and they leave. And it's, to me, it's senseless. It's terrible. What happened to them is horrible. And like I mentioned in the part one, the silver lining is that these two dirtbags both end up in prison.
That's right.
And that's the best place for these two idiots. And, the ending of this video that I watched is, I was taken back because you hear about all this stuff that, and not to take away from Heather, God bless her, but you hear all this stuff that happens to Ryan, and then you think he wakes up in the hospital. Who knows what his brain function is like if he remembers his life before all of this happened, which would make it worse for him.
Ugh.
He can't see anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have to live with his parents or live in some sort of assisted living facility or of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is blind and he has this severe head injury.
Yeah.
He's having seizures all the time. Everything's probably out of whack. And then to find out that 10 years after all this happens, he has a seizure and dies.
Yep.
And that just, to me, I was like, come on.
Yeah, it's just so horrible.
Why, out of all of this, and then at the end of it, he passes away? And I know that in some of the things that I read, people are like, well, the police said that him dying was a direct result of his injuries received from Richie and his father.
Of course.
And so the attempted murder should now be changed to murder.
Right. And it would be a new charge.
It would be a new charge. But I think the reason why something like that hasn't happened, and we've talked about situations like this before, but would it change the sentence of either man?
Sure.
If they're already serving a life sentence,
mm-hmm.
or if it is typical in situations like this to run the second sentence concurrent,
mm-hmm.
would giving him that extra, would it do anything besides create more court cases?
Right.
Create more appeals, create more whatever.
Right.
And so the DA's office can safely say, probably in a situation like this, these two knuckleheads are in jail for life.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because if you listen to the part one episode, I mentioned that Heather's family kind of appealed to the legislature to get a new law enacted, which was later called Heather's Law. And this kind of took that immunity away from Larry's wife,
mm-hmm.
and he was convicted on all of the charges. So
yeah.
the first time he gets away, and I want to say he is cruising about for a solid 5 years.
Yeah.
The process of getting all of this done takes until 2011 before they put this scumbag in jail.
It really made me wonder at the end here, when I first listened to it, that if Ryan had not survived the initial attack,
where would we be?
Where would this even have been solved?
Yeah.
How many more days were going to go by? It's kind of eerie to think about.
Yeah.
Because if nobody would answer that door, and, Dawn didn't have a key, and nobody had any way to get in there, you can just assume, as I am going to right now, that nobody would be getting in that apartment until it's making a smell.
Or, yeah, at the bare minimum, the next day. Let's just say that the cops show up and knock on the door, and they're like, hey, nobody's answering the door. We don't see anything suspicious. We don't have, as those police officers at that point did not have the right to kick that door in.
That's right.
To go in to see if anything was happening. Because I'm sure people are like, well, kick the door.
Right.
Go in and check it out. You can't do that.
Man, you do hear that a lot, though, as a cop. They're like, well, I am their parent, and I say kick the door, and you're like, I'm sorry, you don't live here.
This is not your dwelling.
Yeah.
You can't give me permission to kick his door in.
It's not because we don't want to, because who doesn't enjoy just kicking a door off its hinges? But if you do that, and that person was out partying, the department's paying for that, and so are you.
Yeah. And your supervisor's going to call you and be like, hey, cowboy, come in here. I got to talk to you for a second.
Let me holler at you for a second.
Like, but his dad said, guess what? That don't work.
Nope, it sure doesn't.
And so if the police were speaking to Dawn and they said, listen, best way to go about this, contact the apartment office in the morning, assuming they're open the next day because it is the holidays.
That's right.
And see if you can get them to let you in. And call us back.
Yeah,
let us know whenever they get a key. Call us back. We'll come in there.
And we can also just keep this rolling. And if it doesn't look like an emergency, and you're not the emergency contact on that application.
Yeah.
To be in the apartment, they're going to be like, legally, I can't let you do that. Legally, I can't just open it up. Like I said, I'm pretty sure that it would have been until they smell.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'd have been a little while. Down the road.
That'd have been terrible. And
you're right. Who knows what
exactly?
Because based off of what Ryan said, their evidence in going to speak to Richie and his dad was based off Ryan.
Right.
There's no shell casings because it's a revolver.
That's right.
Would it be reasonable to think that because Richie lived there, that his DNA and his fingerprints would be in there?
At some point,
yes.
Yeah, they would. They'd be like, that can be explained away without the right type of scrutiny.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
totally agree.
It's one of those deals where, who knows? Who knows where that would have went? But I think that in talking about this, one of the things that caught my eye about this case was definitely the way that the police interrogation went, and kind of how this whole story played out. Because for me, at the ending, it was like, this is not where I thought we were going.
Absolutely not. No, because until I got the facts of the case, I'd only just seen the video you sent me, like, hey, check this out. This might be interesting. And I'm like, this guy's being all shady and kind of weird. And then you get to the actual details of the case and you're like, I'm a bad person.
I'm a terrible person for thinking the things, like how angry I was watching this video at Ryan to only find out that your suspect was the victim.
Yeah. It's just a mess.
Not only did you treat him like the suspect, I think for the most part, anybody just kind of with firsthand knowledge of the, starting to go through the video, you're like, this dirty guy, this guy, this is the guy here.
This is the guy, yeah.
And then you listen, you're like, man, I did this. I was in the same mindset of this detective.
Yep.
Dang it.
Just like, oof, yucky.
This is like a good, like, snap of reality. Whenever you think, like, policing and the black and white, there's no gray area, there's no this, no that. Yeah, that's not exactly the case. And this is one of those things for me that kind of set me back to thinking, like, this is why you don't make assumptions.
That's right.
You gather the facts and the evidence and you work it from there. Making assumptions, although, like you said, statistically.
Sure. I mean, can that be explained away? Yeah, in a way.
Yeah. But you have to, taking sides or going with what you thought, this must be what happened. Mm-hmm. This is one of those cases where it didn't go that way, and guess what? You look like a fool. Yeah,
you definitely never want to let your way of thinking get pigeonholed. Just don't. Try your hardest to stay away from that, especially when you're talking about investigating of any kind, personal, private, or law enforcement. Follow the facts the best that you can. Mm-hmm. If you're going to try to maybe use assumptions and statistics as a tool, sure, but make sure you keep your mind clear to the point that you're just trying to follow the evidence, because this isn't the only case like this.
No.
Circumstances can only get weirder. And unless you encounter them in person, you have no idea. So it's just best to just follow what you do know and do your best to try to fill in what you don't know with the evidence at hand.
Exactly. I think that's That's a good bit of advice there, Mike Smith. I think that's a good spot to leave it on.
It is.
So I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of The Murder Project. We look forward to speaking to you guys again really soon.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. Our downloads are going up, our numbers are going up, and we have you to thank for that.
Thank you so much.
If you're looking for us on any of the social media platforms, we are on Facebook at The Murder Project. If you need to search for us, type in facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on Instagrams, we are at The Murder Project. And if you're looking for us on the old Twitters, we are at The Murder Pod. Also, don't forget, if you need to contact us, if you have a longer form question or comment, you can reach out to us on our email, which we got some.
We did.
And that email address is contact@themurderproject.com. Also, don't forget, go on whatever platform you're listening on. If it is available, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, which a lot of people are, hit that subscribe button, leave us a review, and hit that 5 stars, baby.
I want to see all the 5 stars.
All them 5 stars.
Just send them on down the line.
Once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. We look forward to speaking to you guys again soon. But before I go, please remember,
head up, eyes up,
and stay alive.